Bigger than capes.
Give me some insights.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it, and then I watched it.
Oh, dry.
Welcome to Bigger Than Capes. This week, I'm joined by the creator of Sex Castle, Rock Candy Mountain, Kill 'Em All, Assassin Nation, and Old Head. He's also the writer for Dead of Winter and Oni Press's Rick and Morty series, Kyle Starks.
It's me. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I'm looking forward to talking about all of the Kyle Starks projects. I think there's a whole bunch of them. How are you doing in this weirdest of timelines?
I guess you just, I don't know. I don't think I've been able to process it, and it feels like it's been. I know for my house, this is like year 3 of it still being awful. So I just feel like it's like a status quo.
Yeah,
I don't know, man. There's a lot of things that I guess I'm thankful for. I'm thankful that I'm self-employed, so I don't have to go anywhere. I'm thankful that my wife is awesome. So like the people hang out with and see all the time are great.
Yep.
But like, man, it's bad. It's bad. And we all just keep hoping it's going to get better. And maybe this is the month things finally start to turn around for some people, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so.
It feels like there's going to be a lot of work for some countries to really get their stuff back together, and who knows how that's going to affect everybody in the meantime. So it is what it is. We're not here to talk about that, I'm sure. We don't talk about how awful things are because people know. They're on Twitter, they're on Facebook,
they
unless they're not.
I like to think if we set a low enough tone, though, we can only go up, It's all positive from here, right?
Oh, well, I mean, it has to be. It has to be.
That's always my hope, at least.
It's going to be. It's going to be all positive.
All positive.
This will be positive. Look, here's what I've always said about comics, and I'm sure I'll say it again. Is I've always said comics should be fun, and I think they should be something people do for fun. And I think especially in American comics, they're very serious. Mm-hmm. People want very serious comics in America, and it's like I think comics should be a good time, and I think this podcast should also be a good time. Let's not add to to how shitty things are. People know. Let's talk about comics. Let's have a good time.
Let's do it. I'm looking forward to it. So my first question, nothing too heavy, hopefully, but what was it that got you into comics, both as a reader and then as a writer and an artist and all the things you do?
Yeah. I've always read comics. I'm not for sure. I mean, since I was little bitty, I couldn't say like this is what happened. I know that my uncle Tony Starks, that's not a joke, has always been sort of a dealer in Silver Age comics. He's always been involved with comics. I think there's a story when my dad and my uncle were kids, like they were to inherit, I think, like a comic book collection and like a stamp collection. And my uncle talked my dad into taking the stamp collection, which was, I think, a mistake in terms of profitability. So I know my uncle has always been involved, and I don't know if he started it. I don't know. Like I remember, here especially, like you used to be able to get comics in gas stations and grocery stores, and I remember always getting a comic at grocery stores and gas stations, and we just always done it. When we were little, it's funny because especially people are like, oh, what was your first sort of, I'm 43, so when I was little and reading comics, it was the early 80s, and I had all your sort of basic mainstream. I had Spider-Man, I had Justice League, I had Hulk. And this would have been during the period that it was Justice League Detroit. Spider-Man was like fighting Fire Lord. Like it was just Hulk was in the nexus of like the law. It was just a terrible time to be reading those comics. But what did I know? Like as a little kid, my brother got like all the cool comics, so it's like I still got all the cool stuff. But I'm just like a little kid being like, man, I love Martian Manhunter and just like the worst. And X-Men. X-Men was like the only good thing I think I got because the X-Men was always was good through the 90s. But yeah, I mean, I had kind of, like in retrospect, like. Those books weren't very good. I probably shouldn't have like ever really became a very big fan, but I am, and I think because those things were sort of like the weird lost sort of crap eras that people don't talk about those titles. It's sort of the thing for big two stuff that I've always sort of. It's rarely the most popular thing. It's always like I like like in the 90s, which is when I got out of comics for a long time, I was going to be a fine artist, and I was drinking a lot. I was like, man, I love New Warriors, right? Like no one was talking about New Warriors back then. Like, I just love I always like the things that people don't like in the big two. And I think it's because of Justice League Detroit. I think I can blame it directly on Justice League Detroit. Maybe, I don't know.
I think it's weird. Every time I talk to kind of any creator about when they got into comics, they always go into the weird stuff and the unappreciated. And I always feel like that says quite a lot about comics writers and artists. And yeah.
There's probably something to being on the, I mean, especially like I don't know if it's still, I mean, I haven't been outside in 3 years, it feels like, but I guess it's only been like a year and a half. But you know, like when I was a young person, to be reading comics was not cool. But I guess like if you were reading a comic that was cool, it was going to be Superman or Batman. That's probably something to being on the fringes and being interested in the fringes, and also like those are sort of the least explored stories.
Yeah.
That makes you want to like think more about like these universes and these worlds than just the people who are like, man, Batman punched Joker, like that's awesome. I think there's probably something to that, but I'd be speculating for a lot of people, I think.
I think you might be right, though. I definitely see that kind of thing, and I think you get a lot more freedom in the weirder stuff.
For sure.
It seems that way.
Today, for sure, yeah. Nowadays, I mean, I think we're all, like, if we all got our shot, it's like, I mean, I want to do Squirrel Girl or Howard the Duck type thing. Like, I would take whatever, I guess, but it's not like I'm not clawing to be like, man, give me the Avengers. Like, I don't have any interest in that. But it's like, I would love to do a 12-issue D-Man run, I guess. I'd love to do Booster and Beetle for 5 years, I guess. I don't know.
I think 5 years would probably put you on like the longest Booster Gold Blue Beetle run. So
I think probably like three months would put me on the longest for either one of them, outside of like Giffen and DeMatteis, I suspect.
You could be right. Yeah, it's great characters that don't get a lot of lifespan. So what was it that transitioned you from your fine art heavy drinking to being a comic book creator? And
so I worked at a comic book store / video rental / used book and music / pornography store. From 14 from about 14 to 21 or 22. It sort of became a part-time job after I started college, and I worked at an art gallery then. But the thing about this place is like you could watch a movie whenever you wanted to, you could read a book whenever you wanted to, you could read like it was all the music you could want, you know what I mean? Like you had access to all these things, and I feel like if this is like, what was your origin story? Like when I was bitten by a spider or whatever, it's probably because like I was just consuming media like nonstop for 10 years. Because it was available and it was free, and it's like, well, because I guess that's now, but it's like, it's, you know, I'm a big Marx Brothers fan, right? And that's because the store we worked at, the guy who ordered the movies we had the best classic movies collection in town. So it's like, man, all this classic comedy, be like, oh, you should check out this classic comedy that, you know, today probably isn't as sought out as it was even back then. So it's like everything. So the guy the really well-read guy would be like, oh, you should check out this book, and you'd read it because, you know, you're 18, and what else do you have to do in 1995 besides read and smoke cigarettes and drink coffee, and watch movies all the time? Anyway, so I mean, I consumed all this media sort of, and I've always sort of watched things critically because of that. It's like, how do you do that? How do you do that? So I went to college and I was going to be a fine artist. I took myself very seriously. I was very pretentious. And 3 years in, I realized this isn't a realistic, like, I'll never make money doing this, right? Like, I'll never, this is someone should have told me, don't go to school for fine art. Though I'm exceptionally glad that I did, but it's like, I should have gone to school for something else and taken fine arts classes as electives, right? If I was smart about it. Anyway, I got out of that. I took some graphic design classes. I ended up getting into print production because of that, which is not graphic design, but it uses sort of the same tools. And I was like, this is my real life job. And this is what I'm going to do this is it. I'm going to work at this print company. Okay. We got married and we had kids. When we had my first kid, I realized I would never, there's an irony to this part of the story, but I realized I'd never have free time again. And we were about to have our second kid. And I was like, oh, I should make a list of things that I'll never get to do before this kid's born. And I know I made a list of like 8 things, but I don't think I did any, and I don't remember any besides finish a comic. when I was a young person, I'd always draw comics, and I'd get like 5 pages. You know what I mean? Like there's just nothings. Yeah. And I maybe did some like some zine stuff, but nothing finished. It was always like a couple pages. Like I never did like a 24-page comic. So I was like, well, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to put it on the web, and I'll make myself accountable by saying I'm going to post it on Mondays and Wednesdays. And I'll just post it Monday and Wednesdays. Like, I'm not going to tell anyone about it. Like, the thing about saying I'm going to post on Mondays and Wednesdays is a Kyle Starks hack. I'm so beholden to deadlines and responsibilities that if I say I'm going to do something, I just have to do it. And this is something I tell a lot of people when they're starting is like, figure out the way to trick yourself, to punish yourself so that you have to do it or else you'll hate yourself. So I started doing a comic called Legend of Ricky Thunder, which is about the world champion pro wrestler who thinks wrestling is real, then has to defend the Earth from aliens because he is the world champion. And I thought, well, what comic would I read that, like, if I was going to make a comic, I wanted one that I could read. What would it be? And at the time, and still very much, I love pro wrestling. So I got to make a pro wrestling comic. There aren't any, and I want one to exist, and I'll make it, and I'll like it, and I did. And I did, again, just for fun. I did not promote it. It was just something I was trying to do before we had our second kid, and I thought I'd just be dad for the rest of my life, right? Yeah. Back then, there was a website named Comics Alliance, which was a great website at the time, a really stellar, like what I think comics journalism should be. Mm-hmm. And they found my work through Flickr, through like I did like this thing about, I did the ABCs of mediocre Marvel villainy, which goes back to I only like the weird fringe guys. So I did ABCs, and they saw it, and I guess they sort of followed that back to my website, which had Legend of Ricky Thunder on it. Mm-hmm. And one of the writers there was a big wrestling fan, and they started promoting it. And it's like people liked it, and they're like, "Hey, this is good." And I'm like, "Oh, well, that's weird," because I was just making this thing, right? I was just making this thing to make this thing. So what do you do then? It's like, well, people were like, you should go to conventions. So I did a Kickstarter. It did pretty well. I used all that money. I went to conventions. Mm-hmm. I paid for my way because it's really expensive and you don't really make money. It's a rough gig. I don't know if you guys know about conventions, especially when you're first starting out. Mm. But I had a fairly good network through social media, and it worked out pretty well. And I was like, I really liked making this comic. I'm going to make another one. It's the same deal. I'm just going to make this comic for fun, and then I'll do a Kickstarter, and we'll see what happened. Well, that was Sex Castle, and I did Sex Castle, and I went to conventions, and this is, I guess, so I'm making these things. And it's like I'm working full time. I'm working 40 hours a week. I have 2 kids, I guess, at this point. My wife nods from the corner. I definitely did. I was doing this comic at work, and when I came home, it's just all I did. It's like I didn't play video games. I didn't do anything. I just made comics all the time. I made Sex Castle all the time. Anyway, so I went to a convention. I went to my favorite convention, which is Heroes in Charlotte, North Carolina, which I miss the most of all conventions because it's like a family reunion I like going to. And Matt Fraction, through a bunch of random events, there's a really great place to eat there, and you don't want to go alone. And I told the guy, I was like, hey, are you going to this place? And they're like, yeah, but I'm like, no, I'm going to come. Anyway, Matt and Chip Zdarsky ended up going, and Matt was like, oh, I want to see this comic. This interviewer says your comic's really good. I'm like, sure. So the next day I went, this was right when Sex Criminals was out too. So they had literally a line, okay? It's Chip and Kelly Sue and Matt, and they had a line that went all the way around the convention center because Sex Criminals was, it's amazing. Yeah. And this was like peak Sex Criminals. So like Sunday sort of came around, and like Matt had, and I know he's the nicest dude. He'll go around and look at stuff, and if he likes you and it looks interesting, he'll get your thing. But he had came by, and I was like, you know what? And I hate leaving my table then because I might miss a sale, and every dollar counts when you're first starting out. Yeah. I was like, I'm just gonna take my book over to him. And so I took the book over, and there's this line. I'm like, I'm not gonna wait in this line. I was like, hey Matt, if you want my book, it's like you can have it. This huge ass line, right? Like signing for like hundreds of people, even on Sunday. And he's like, no, I'm gonna. How much is it? I'm gonna pay you for it. And I was like, no, like seriously, don't worry about it, right? And we, this is like a seminal moment in my comic book story, my comic book life, and it's a story I love to tell. But he's like, no. I was like, no, just take it. Like, you're Matt Fraction. You can literally just have my book. And he stood up. He was going to get his wallet, but he stopped and he turned. He looked at me and he pointed at me and he goes, "Pros get paid." And then he paid me for it. And then his plane didn't take off on time afterwards. So I guess he was reading the books that he had in his bag, because on his plane before he took off, he's tweeting. He's like, I'm reading Sex Castle by Kyle Starks. It's amazing. I'm selling. I think I sold like 30 copies on my web store, and I'm like, what a coup, right? Like I just made a bunch, like not a bunch of money, but like pretty good money. Like thanks, Matt.
Yeah, that's not bad.
And then he emailed me and he asked me where I wanted to talk to Image. And then that book, of course, it's nominated for an Eisner for Best Humor Publication. It was optioned before it came out by the Workaholics, which has since disappeared. But at the time, it's like everything's happening.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this is the best hobby. Like I found the best hobby. Also at this time, I lost my job. So, my wife was like, do you think you can make a go of it? And I'm like, I think I can. Mm-hmm. And ended up getting offered Invader Zim. Oni was like, "You like to write an issue of Invader Zim," and I was like, "I've never seen it. Like, I'm 43, and I was in college, like college things when that was on TV. Like, I don't know anything about it." And they're like, "Oh, that's what they want. They want a really fresh perspective." As it turns out, they did not want that. And I was like, "Man, I told wife, I was like, I wish they would offer me Rick and Morty because I love Dan Harmon so much. I'm just such a big fan of Dan Harmon as a craftsman, and his ability to tell a story is so strong, Mm-hmm. And they did. And they're like, do you want to do 5 issues? And I ended up doing more than there are episodes of the show presently. I don't know what, and was able to do that. And I think at the same time I started growing Rock Candy Mountain. Everything started just rolling along. It was great. It was great times. And it's funny, like I did an interview with Jason Latour a few years ago. And he is like, when did you want to know you want to make comics for a living? And I'm like, when it started becoming a living. Like, I had no plans. I had no plot. I didn't have like a set of goals. I was like, it happened, and it's great because when I started making Ricky Thunder, I found like this is the thing like that really makes me happy. Like I really love making comics, so it's great. My hobby turned into my career. That's my origin story. It's very exciting. It's maybe someone out there has like they have like a Rocky style like comic story, I do not. I kind of tripped and fell, and have been very lucky and continue to get opportunities, and I'm thankful for them.
Yeah, that is really cool, and I guess credit to Matt Fraction.
Oh, always. Matt Fraction and the writer Chris Sims for Comics Alliance discovered me, and really back then Comics Alliance, I don't know how many careers they did legit made, because people knew that these are people who had good taste, and they were willing to look outside of the top 5 things on a comic book shelf. Like they were really looking to consider things. And I wish there was more of that. Not that I want to, denigrate on comic journalism, but I wish there was more people who were tastemakers in comics. Like, it's funny, like, there's so many influencers for fucking, clothing shit, or like whatever, like candy. But like comics doesn't really have an influencer, and it doesn't have a site that looks like it's like, I feel like that's how people find things. I can go off on a link, but I think it's because a lot of it I know is because people were scared to give a bad review, because then you wouldn't get DC's free comics every month or whomever. And it's like, if everything's good, then nothing's bad, and nothing's bad, then nothing's good. Like that's how it works. It's all mediocre. So it's like, I really wish Comics Alliance, I would literally they'd be like, this issue sucks. Like don't buy Ant-Man number 27. Like it sucks. They really dropped the ball on it. And I wish there was more of that, though. I know that's a slippery slope, because I don't want people saying my stuff sucks. I don't want to hear about that either, but it's like, if it sucks, it sucks. But it's less someone saying something sucks. It's more someone being willing to be so honest to call. Yeah. That's like Siskel and Ebert, like they said movies sucked all the time, and they weren't always right, but like at least they were like, hey, and you knew what you're getting into. Anyway, Chris Sims and Matt Fraction, I tell my wife all the time, if they were like, hey, we're gonna go do a heist, are you in? I'd be like, I gotta go. Like I owe these guys a bunch. And Matt's funny, because every time I see Matt, I'm always like, hey, thanks again. I say it to him every time, and I know he hates it, but he's like, hey, if it wasn't good, and it's like there's some truth to that. Like I know now, like 7 years later, there's some truth to that. But I think there's a lot of good things that no one ever sees, and I got the bump, and I'm going to be grateful to those guys who were like, this is good, this guy's good. Yeah,
of course, that makes sense. I agree. It's interesting. So you mentioned Ricky Thunder having the wrestling inspiration, and there's definitely some constant themes throughout your books. There's always a kind of action movie vibe, and there's a lot of assassins, as we've mentioned in the past. So what is it that kind of made you want to take, the wrestling and the assassins and the action movie kind of feels and channel that into all of your work or a lot of your work?
Yeah. I think my thing has always been, as much as I can with each project is, and I've been so lucky is that I've not had to do something I didn't want to do to date, right? Is that every book I make, I want to make the book I want to read.
Yeah, that's fair.
The world that I want to exist. And like I said, at the time, there wasn't any wrestling comics, or there was nothing of note. Like this was, I mean, I think 7 years ago. Like time's gone so fast and so slow at the same time. It's tough for me to remember. It seems like I was doing Ricky. I mean, my kid's 10, so it had to be more than 10 years ago, but it doesn't feel like it. It just feels like yesterday to me. So for Ricky Thunder is that I love wrestling and I wanted to make a wrestling comic. And then for the next book, which was Sex Castle, I was watching Roadhouse, which for the 1,000,000th time, and I was like, man, there should be more things like tonally like Roadhouse.
Yeah.
And
okay.
Like it's action, but it's sort of like low stakes. It's all in like a little shitty city. Anyway, so I was like, there should be more things like I wish there was another thing that felt like Roadhouse. And so I started to make Roadhouse, and about halfway through though, I was like, 13-year-old Kyle would want you to go much bigger with he would want you to make the best 80s action movie never made. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make the best 80s action movie never made. And so I did that. Now, after I finished Sex Castle, again, I was working full time. It was a nothing, right? Mm-hmm. And the next book I was going to do was going to be Old Head. And the reason why is because I did my love letter to wrestling. I did my love letter to action movies. And now I was going to do my love letter to basketball because I'm a huge NBA guy. I'm a huge hoops guy. But it's like, it's a weird, I was like, how do I do this thing? And Old Head's been different, but I was like, oh, I also really wanted to do a love letter to like Fright Night. Like I want to do Fright Night meets basketball, which is stupid. That it's like, if the idea works. Like I was like, I have this idea works, and that it all sort of comes together immediately. But at the time, like that was going to be my next book. Like I started working on it whenever that, again, 7 years ago, I guess. And it's funny because my wife was like, you're going to have 2 books out in the direct market or whatever that's going to be called Sex Castle and Old Head. And it's like, you're going to be the bad book name guy. And it's like, that's true. But what happened is Sex Castle took off and I really got the yips. I got really uncomfortable about my next book being something that I knew wasn't for everyone at face value. I think Old Head's a really tough sell, but I think it's something everyone would enjoy. I really believe that. But people see basketball and they're like, I'm like I'm going to make you read a basketball game. Like, and if I did, like, you know what, it'd be like a good Japanese anime. You'd really like it. But it's like, that's not what I want people to do. I just want to show how much I love, like, what's great about basketball in terms of the sort of ethereal outside. Anyway, so I got the yips about this being the next thing because I knew it'd be a hard sell and it'd make me look weirder than what I wanted to. So I did Kill Them All instead, which was my love letter to 90s action movies, which also got optioned and did really well. I had a really great Kickstarter and Oni put it out and did really well. But it's always that. It's always, what did I do after? I did Rock Candy Mountain. So I did Rock Candy Mountain. At the time, I was losing my job, which is actually Kill Them All. Like Kill Them All is 100% was written right after I lost my job. I did that comic. I did, I can't remember now. I did something like 110 pages in 30 days, something crazy. Wow. Because I lost my job at the beginning of January. And I was like, I got to get this book done and get it out in February, basically, so we have money to be, even though I had a severance and all this stuff. So that book is 100% about people losing their jobs and how one should react to it, right? But while I was in that process, I was reading about, I should backtrack because this is even right. I'm so interested in action movies. I was like, I should start seeing how other countries do action movies. Like, okay. Because if like Asia has 1 billion action movies that I've never watched. So I started watching a lot of Asian Kung Fu cinema. And I became really interested in a sort of what's called wushu, which I misinterpreted based on the ones that I watched, apparently, versus what the actual, like, if you were going to break down what a wushu movie it'd be different than what I perceived, but basically the same. And to me, they were always journey movies. Someone's going from point A to point B. Okay. There's a lot of fighting, which is what I want, right? Yep. Because I love watching people fight and I love drawing people fight. There's like something magical happens, but no one gives a shit. Like it's always really like a dog will talk and they'll be like, that's fine. No one cares.
Yeah.
Or there's a magic sword, or Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon to me is a wushu movie. I think it technically is. But there's a bunch of these movies, and I was like, oh, what would, if I was going to take this subgenre and make it an American movie, how would I do it? And I was like, it's this classic sort of journey from point A to point B, and they're looking for this magical place that's not real. And so, I mean, that's like things like, what is this? What is the American version of this type of movie? Which is what Rock Candy Mountain. That's always what it is. It's just me, like, what do I think should exist, and what do I want to consume? And I think, like, I reread my books recently for different reasons. Like, I read Ricky Thunder, I don't know, a year ago, and I was like, the art's kind of rough. Like, I would, but that's to be expected, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, man, I was like, this is good. I like this. And then I reread Rock Candy Mountain. I was like, man, I really like this is good. I did a problem. And like, even the ones that I thought were only like Kill Them All, I reread. I'm like, man, this, because I had to have an interview with a potential director or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? This book is good. Like, I did a really good job with this book. And I think that's what you want to make. You want to make something that you look at a couple of years down the road and you go, man, no, this is good. I made the thing. I made exactly, like, I've consumed this now, being so far separated, and I enjoyed it. Like, that's what I try to make as much as I can every time.
I think that's a good...
Hitman. My wife makes fun of me for the Hitman. Old Head had no Hitman in it.
That is
Mars
true.
Had no Hitman, but it did have an ex-army guy, so he's kind of still a Hitman, probably. But we're trying to move away from Hitman all the time. I want to do only Hitman books. They're my favorite. I just love Hitman. I don't know what to say.
Just one a year, every year, forever.
You don't have, like, it's so easy to explain. Why would they shoot this person? Because that's their job.
I mean, if it works, it works. Who can argue with it? So, speaking of Hitmen, the first time I spoke to you was at a book club meeting I was running when we were talking about Assassination, which is about all the Hitmen in a sense.
Yeah, I get it out of my system. It didn't work.
Sometimes trying to get something out of your system just puts it even more in your system.
It just reminded me why I love it.
Which is completely understandable. Assassination is, you know what? It might be one of my favorites of your books. It might be my favorite. I'm not going to lie.
I'm okay with it.
Good, it's good. It's good to have a favorite, and it did get me curious though, because I reread Assassination, and then almost immediately after I read Old Head, and it got me curious about the fact that both you and Erica Henderson, after Assassination, decided to go and do books involving Dracula. Was that just a weird coincidence, or did you both decide now's the time for the Dracula books?
I mean, I like I said, I'd intended to do a Dracula book many, many years ago, and I just felt like I'd reached a point personally where I thought I had a large enough audience that trusted me, that at the very least, all my diehards would check out this book, which is the case. I mean, I think I had fewer sales than Kill Them All in terms of Kickstarter, and I'm definitely a bigger name. Like, I have Rick and Morty. I've had 4 years of Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
I thought for sure, but it's a weird thing. But yeah, I think it's coincidence. I mean, I know Erica is working on other stuff. That's just the thing that came out next, right?
Yeah.
So it's like not the next thing she did. It's like the second thing she did. But it is. I mean, it is weird, right? But Erica, Erica was one of the first people. I tabled next to her at that first show, and we were both nobodies. When we did the next show, the next year we did it. She had Subatomic Party Girls, which was a really tiny little web comic type thing, and I was selling Sex Castle, but no one cared. The next year we did it. In fact, that show, the second convention I did, Erica was like, "Oh, Marvel asked me to do some character designs for Squirrel Girl," and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, who's going to write it? Because this will be shit." And they're like, "Oh, right." I'm like, "Oh, that's a really good idea." And so the next year, she had Squirrel Girl for 6 months, maybe longer than that. And Sex Castle had been out by Image, and it had gotten nominations. So it's like we sort of leveled up at the same time. Now the next time, she's gone, but we've been friends for a long time. If you follow her on Twitter, we both love 80s era cinema. That's the type of storytelling that we're interested in. We have similar aesthetics for story, and we're old friends. So it's like, for her to be doing a Dracula book, it's not surprising. It's not surprising at all.
And don't get me wrong, they're two very different Draculas.
Oh, for sure. One's drawn way better than the other one too. One is drawn. The art on that book is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
There was a point in Old Head where I got to thinking about if you swap the Old Head Dracula with Dracula motherfucker Dracula, you get a whole different experience in both books.
But, I think then it becomes like a real sort of like a Hammer like Dracula. Like instead of doing like an exploitation Dracula, it'd be more like Abbott and Costello meet. Like if Alex DeCampi went a different direction.
I mean, I don't get me wrong. I'm sure that could probably work in a real weird way.
I think they did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I love my Dracula though. I love my Dracula boys a lot.
Yeah, I enjoyed Old Head a lot, and it's a weird mix of ideas, but it's a good mix of ideas. And I think I agree with what you said that some people will probably hear basketball and turn away from that, but I think the basketball fits in nicely with the monsters.
It's just a different setting. It's just some color. It's like I feel like, again, I mean, American comics are so just stuck, and it's like you can try new and different things, and I think Dracula Motherfucker is a fairly good example of that too. Even though it's the same thing that I did, it's still Dracula. You know what I mean? Like everyone loves Dracula. But it's tough to be like, it's just a different setting. Like, I have a book down the line. It's like, well, I don't want to do Hitman every time, but I like a certain type of action protagonist. It's like, well, they're going to be like a hockey goon or something. And people are like, oh, hockey. It's like, it's not that, man. Like, you saw Sudden Death. Everyone saw Sudden Death, right? Sudden Death is great. That's a hockey environment movie. Like, I'm sorry, but it's still tons of fun. It's like, it doesn't always need to be Hitman in black suits, white shirt, and black tie. You know what I mean? It's just like we can mix it up. We can tell stories. We can tell those stories can be fun outside of the settings of people flying through the air or, being very clear, very specific sort of tropes, even though I'm sort of interested in how all sort of trope characters are the same right now because I've been watching more anime than I normally do. They have a very interesting system of kind of using the same characters every time.
Yep. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, which I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated with it because it's like, well, anyway, that's neither here nor there. But the thing is, like, Old Head's a tough sell. I know it is, and even to just say, like, what is it? I mean, I took basketball off the Kickstarter after a couple of days. Like, I just like, oh, it's a, you know what I mean? I really minimized it because it's like people don't want that, and it's like that's fine. It's just weird. It's also like, man, I've been nominated a couple times for awards and. People keep buying my stuff. Like maybe you could try it, like try something different. That's fine. Yeah. Old Head's done great by word of mouth. It's great because I think, and that's what I thought. I knew that would happen. I don't know if it's happened quite I was hoping. You don't hope. I mean, I didn't expect, but one would wish it'd be this huge thing. But I'm still regularly selling like that book. Yeah. On word of mouth alone, and into the year things, and people talking, it's like because it's good. But the thing is, it's like I was saying earlier about how comics needs influencers. Is that someone for anything that no one's so Matt Fraction is going to sell one because he's great, but Matt Fraction is going to sell well on any book he does forever. Okay, yeah, because he's been established, and the way that entertainment works is that once you're established, you kind of have to really mess it up because Nicolas Cage is always going to have work. You know what I mean? Like once you get to a certain stage, even if you do something that's unusual, it doesn't matter. Because everyone knows Matt Fraction makes good work. Brian K. Vaughan makes good work. Jason Aaron makes good work, which they do. But the thing is, like, they've reached the point where it's like, it's just a fact, right? It's just a fact that they do. And it's just like Donnie. Let's like Donnie Cates. Donnie is great. And when Donnie did God Country, I'm certain he did some sort of like Robert Johnston Crossroads Devil deal because his entire work changed so much. But no one cared about Donnie. But then he did Rednecks, and he did 3 killer books in a year, and that's something. Yeah. But somebody has to go. Matt Rosenberg's really good. You should check out 4 Kids in a Bank because Matt Rosenberg's really good. So just to tell, otherwise you won't. You'll never know. You know what I mean? Because it's expensive, and there's a lot of variation. There's a lot of reasons why. But you want to get to that point where you're Wes Anderson or you're Edgar Wright, where people are like, oh, it's the new Edgar Wright. I'm just going to go see it. Yeah. So. With Old Head, I knew that's what it was going to be. It was going to be Rushmore, right? Is that what's it about? It's about this kid's in school and he's having a feud with a a guy who owns a business over, like, what are you talking about? This is fucking insane.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound good. It's like, no, trust me, it's really good. That's what Old Head was. I think actually that's what a lot of my books are. But it's like, that's how it is. Like I said, I'm making the things I want to make, and I'm hoping I make it good enough that when people do read it, they go, that was good. That's it. That's all I'm looking for.
I think that's completely fair. Old Head came to me from Matt, who was one of the co-hosts of the show, who's a usual of your work. So yeah, it's working, at least.
It's working very slowly. It's working very slowly. But like it is what it like. It's funny because like I'm moving. I'm trying to maybe do more mainstream things to see if I can do more mainstream things, but at the same time still be something that interests me, which is to say not comedy. That's the other thing. I think comedy is a really hard sell because it's a subjective experience, and to be like, oh, it's really funny. Course. It's like if you say, oh, it's really funny to someone, they're like, it's not though.
Yeah.
No, I think stuff's always funny. I think I can say that safely. But like I want to do something. I want comics to be fun, and I want them to be things I like, and say, well, it's different than trying to make something to get. I'm trying to find that recipe to get rich off. You know what I mean? So I'm just gonna keep doing it. I said I'm working on something a little more mainstream right now that hopefully pans out. It's very nerve-wracking because I'm used to doing a certain type of. I'm used to doing comedy, and I'm not doing comedy, so it's like very nerve-wracking for me because I can't tell for sure what works and what doesn't work. But that's the thing is like, man, I've kind of made myself this. It's like I think the industry knows these things are good and they'll sell just enough, and we'll get optioned because I always get optioned. Or knock on. I've been optioned on everything to date, so it's like, well, they might make a move. This might be the one to make a move. Everyone knows it. It's like, man, I wish comic people sort of all love. You know, I wish there's more. But they just have to try it. That's the thing. I thought Assassination also. Assassination is like, oh, I'll do a book with Erica. Yeah. People will love it. And then they'll want to read Rock Candy Mountain. They'll love it. And then they'll want to read Sex Castle. And they'll definitely love that because Sex Castle is the best. And so on and so forth. But it's like, it didn't happen. That's not what happens. Like comics, you think that's how they work because that's how I consume film, right?
Yeah, of course.
If I see something new and it's an old director and it's like, oh, it's I like that director, but this one's different. Like I'm like, who wrote this? And then I want to see what else they wrote, and I watch those movies. And almost always, it's like I got it. Whenever these people write movies, or if it's a writer director, it's like, man, I love this new piece by the writer director. I'm gonna see the next thing they do. That's how you create your fandom, and that's how I thought. You feel like that's how comedy or comics would be. Yeah, because it's kind of not. It's kind of not how it works. It's weird. It's weird.
It is. I always expect that. I always think that if you read something by a creator and you like it, you'll go down that rabbit hole of
at least once.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just because I think for me the example was I'd never read anything by Jeff Lemire until about 5 years ago, and then I read, I think it was his run on Bloodshot for Valiant, and from there I was like, yeah,
weird way to get in here.
Really not the Jeff Lemire intro point. And from there I was like, man, this is a really cool run, but what else has he done? And from there, just love everything. And even the sad hockey books and the
I feel like Lemire is one of those guys. Now this is the thing that I don't have. And I talk about Lemire and Matt Kent and Chip pretty often. Lemire did Essex County, and he was doing Sweet Tooth. And let's say Sweet Tooth is so Essex County is his Sex Castle, and Sweet Tooth is his Rock Candy Mountain. And Sweet Tooth got him a really nice following. But I think he was probably maybe better off than I am. He also didn't have to pay for medical care because he's Canadian. But then what happened is, DC rebooted and they didn't have any writers, and he's friends with Scott Snyder, so he started writing half of the DC books, right? So he was writing like 3 or 4 major DC titles for a while. He brought in Matt Kent, who's his friend. Matt Kent had done some really weird indie books.
He has.
3-Story Man and Pistol Whip, like really weird, like good. I mean, Matt's a friend of mine, and I think he's one of the best. Like that dude does not have a bad book out. But he wrote, well, maybe those DC books. But they worked for DC and they didn't like it, and so they went to Valiant. But they were in the mainstream. They were validated. They were justified, right? They're like, these guys wrote Justice League. They wrote Justice League.
Yeah.
Then they wrote a ton of Valiant books, but those are American accepted books. And after Lemire is bulletproof, but even then, I bet he was selling great. I don't know what Lemire did right after DC. I'm sure it was like Plutona. Is that it?
Yeah, I think it might have been Plutona, and then like Descender and things like that.
Yeah, he was doing it. Underwater.
Underwater Welder.
And I bet Underwater Welder sold really well. But it wasn't until he did the Black Hammer. Right now, he did the Black Hammer stuff, which is more superhero stuff, by the way. And Jeff Lemire is what I would say he's one of the 3 most important people in comics, in mainstream American comics right now. What a weird journey, right? What a weird journey. That's the thing. Whenever I talk about my career path, and Chip Zdarsky is the same way, right? Nobody, nothing, literally. No one read any of the things he did before Sex Criminals, which he drew.
Yeah.
He drew. Then he writes Howard the Duck.
Yeah. And
then next thing you know, he's the kind of the #1 writer at Marvel Summit, right? And he's not doing comedy anymore.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
And he's not doing comedy anymore. And for me, it's man, that's part, not part why, but it's I need to flex those muscles. But it's those 2 guys, they both had a breakout book followed by mainstream success. And it's I haven't done that. And I don't know if I want to do that. I mean, I do, but I don't. But I think that's part of it, because when they did Marvel, when he did Howard the Duck, and when he did Spider-Man, and when Lemire did all those DC books, they were validated. That was in lieu of an influencer, because people go, oh, he's good, he's getting to write this book, and he's not fucking it up because they're good, right? You're good, you're not gonna fuck it up. That's part. But all these guys are fucking. Sorry, I'm cursing so much. They're such writers. They're incredible writers too, so they're not going to mess up. But they were validated, and once you get validated, then you can do Black Hammer, or you can do Mind Management. You can do Department H. Those are amazing books. Black Badge by Matt Kinson. Matt Kinson stuff is so good. But and I think he would say those few years he worked, even at Valiant. I think Valiant, because it's superheroes and that's what America wants. It validates you, and people will then read your next thing. I think Dracula did so well because Erica has validated herself with Squirrel Girl and Assassination, even though no one bought it. But it's we should check this out. And Alex has been around forever, but I think Alex said, I don't know if she's really had that thing that people go, oh, have you read Alex Campy's Blank? It's No Mercy, by the way. If you want to know, No Mercy is great. But she's been around forever with Dark Horse doing Grindhouse things. But I feel that's the book where people Alex is probably going to do great after Dracula Motherfucker. At least I hope she does. She's done fine. She's doing better than me. I know that. So, but it's all the validation, right? It's all being validated over and over. And I keep doing weird stuff and hoping to get validated for it, which is probably dumb. But here I am doing my thing.
I mean, I'm sure everyone feels like they're doing the weird stuff, though, right?
I don't think, man. I mean, out in the trenches, I look around and I see a lot of people who are clearly always trying to chase the tail of something. It's
okay. I
think there's a lot of people. I think there's, Donnie did all that weird stuff, but Donnie will tell you that he always wanted to write. He was an intern there. This is what he's always wanted to do. Mm. And when I was 15, I love superheroes more than anything on earth. It's anything. That's why I love wrestling, because wrestling is real life superheroes. It's people in masks that are fighting good versus evil, and they're punching each other, right? It's that's why I love these things, is because I love superheroes for so much of my life. And now I'm 43, and it's man, I don't care about that. All those stories exist, and they the thing with Spider-Man is that he'll never die, and I think he'll never end. Yeah. And for me, I'm more interested. I'm more interested in a good movie. It has a beginning, a middle, and end, and there's stakes. There's real stakes. You can kill whomever you want in that story. And even with Assassination, that was the thing, is I want to show the stakes are high. I can kill whomever I want. And with Assassination, when it got to the last issue, Erica and I had we talked. I was like, I think I should kill fucking Dave, and she's like, and I'm like, I think I should kill fucking Dave, because there might not be any more Assassination, but I don't want someone else to write fucking Dave if it's not me. It's maybe we should just kill him. And there's a whole discussion. It's there's stakes. But with Spider-Man, he'll always be back, and even if he's replaced, it's still Spider-Man, right? And then Peter Parker will still come back, because people in comics are always we still like the other guy better than the new guy, even if they're exactly the same. And so it's tough. I feel it's something that I need to do and I should do. And it'd be if I was a pilot, I'd want to fly all the planes, right? And it's like, man, I don't know. I don't know what that story is that interests me as much as the stuff that I've done to date. But also, I know I have to do that stuff. I would like the Valiant stuff. I need to look into Valiant stuff, maybe. I don't know. That's
I think you've got a Valiant book in you.
What's that? A Valiant book? I love Valiant. I was a hardcore guy back in the 90s. I loved hardcore because they could only have one power at a time. I thought that was awesome. That's it. That's the only thing I feel about it.
I think hardcore overly uncool, but the whole like switching between powers is cool. I think that's the like.
I think there's a way you could do it. I reread those recently because my memory. You know what else I really liked? Which is that every artist who watched be like, that's bullshit. I really liked about Valiant when they first came around is like everything kind of looked the same, and that was intentional. Like all the art styles were, and it's like it makes it thing. It's like we've made a cohesive universe, except for Brian Windsor Smith. He gets to do whatever he wants. We don't give like
of course.
Brian, he gets to do what he wants, but EXO and Solar were kind of off to the side a little bit. Yeah. So when they showed those a big event, they weren't showing up all the time, so it was fine. They were drawn a little bit different. But I always like some of the things I really liked is like it felt cohesive. Now I'm so far away because that was the mid '90s where it's like now Liefield's coming in and influencing everything, and art's getting wild. Like people are getting looser and scratchier, and Miller I'm sure had a big influence on all that too. It's like art was changing so much. It's like some of it was so sort of even for like mainstream comics was like so experimental. It's kind of hard to read what's happening, and but now it's like we're so far away. It's like you'd be mad if Skybound put out 4 books and they look the same, you'd be like, what is this garbage? Like no one wants to look the same. And it's like, fine, I'm not saying they should. It's just like I thought at that time it was a really good decision for a new universe, for it to feel like a cohesive universe. What a tangent. Hardcore, man. I think I could do hardcore. I'm gonna send an email to Mr.
Someone. I don't know who's in charge anymore.
I know you've started this universe. You've rebooted your universe like 10 years ago, and I have no idea what happened. But maybe I could take a go at this really obscure group that no one probably likes but me.
I mean, I think hardcore is still knocking around in the new universe, but never in the mainstream part of it. Never like at the forefront. So maybe that's your opportunity to really hammer them into the main Valiant universe.
Maybe that's my 2021. Is I rejuvenate hardcore to the level they once were.
Whatever that really means, but yeah. I'm majorly off the questions I had planned to ask at this point, but hey, that's part of the fun. So a lot of the projects you worked on, and we've touched on this a little bit, have kind of come up through Kickstarter. At least all of the creator-owned ones, most of the creator-owned ones.
Rock Candy Mountain was just Image.
Oh, of course, yeah, and Assassin Nation as well.
Yeah, I think there's something else in there. Your own, maybe. Yeah, and I was going to stop doing Kickstarter after Kill Them All, which was my third one. I just felt like I was getting opportunities and I didn't really need it. No, I didn't. It wasn't necessary for me to use that service. And I also thought, and I've changed on this, which is there's probably some degree of either like self-delusion or hypocrisy, but I felt like me being on Kickstarter when I was doing really well on Kickstarter while I was doing other things was me blocking other people who were on Kickstarter. Like me having a higher degree of visibility would hurt lower visibility creators. And maybe that is true, as I did Old Head this year, and I will probably do a Kickstarter next year. I don't know what it'll be, but the reason why is I did Old Head because I knew I couldn't find a publisher for it because I knew it was weird and I just wanted to do it.
Yeah, okay.
About for a long time. And my thing also is like do a Kickstarter and then find a publisher. I think that's a valid way to do business in comics and where we are. But the thing is, man, I sincerely love the Kickstarter experience. I love seeing each sale and who it goes to. I love when people. I love being able to. Let's pause on that. Here's what I like about Kickstarter the best. I love getting a book, right? I love getting a comic book. But you know what would be better? If I get a comic book with a bunch of stickers and a piece of postcard art and a bookmark. That's better. Yeah. Right? That's signed by the creator. I like that. I think that's a better experience. I think there's so many comics out that having some degree of bonus to it or personalization. So I like that. I think it's a better way to get a book. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
You get to the comic book store and they'd be like, "Oh, here's all your stickers for old like or whatever." Like, but for Kickstarter, it's like it'd be like, "I'm definitely gonna give you stickers," which I'm always gonna do, even though they're dumb. Who knows what you're gonna do with them? I don't care.
Yeah.
But it's like stickers and a bookmark or a piece of postcard art. I really doing a bookmark, and I didn't do one for Old Head, I don't think, but it's like I don't know why, because I really think a bookmark is a good thing to have. Period. Like we're always looking for like I'm always like something apart, right? But it's like you could just use my Kill Them All bookmark or my Sex Castle bookmark, and I did like little strips on them, or I did some little bits, so like they're mildly amusing. Anyway, so I like that. I think it's a better way to get a small press run book. I really like the experience of, like I said, I like knowing everyone who bought my book. I don't know why. I just like that I'm having some sort of interaction with everybody. I do like commissions. I like that, even though I probably don't like the week where I have to do 50 to 70 commissions or however 30 or however many I've done. But it's like, hey, so for Old Head, I was like, hey, here's a really cheap tier. And I'll do a basketball themed. Like it doesn't have to be basketball. Like you could do Teen Wolf, you could do Space Jam. You could. A lot of people ask for. Someone asked for like Wolverine playing basketball from these people ask for Snake Plissken playing basketball. It's like that's what these people got it. It's like you get original art at a cheaper tier because it's themed to this thing, right? So it's fun. And then there's another thing, like just whatever commission you want, and people. It's like what people ask for is really interesting. But it's like, I'm signing like thanks, man, thanks. I'm signing every one of them, right? Thanks, because I'm grateful for this. But it's so great to be like these are the 500 plus people. I know their names and they can message me right now because they're on my Kickstarter. They can just message me anytime. Yeah. And I love that experience. It feels like I'm hand selling at a convention, but I'm doing really well for once, I guess. No, not I do fine. But you know what I'm saying? It's like to have like a 15 grand plus. It's just a great feeling, and I like how there's no editors. There's no one telling me what to do. There's no one telling me how I'm supposed to do it. I have a system in place where things get done. Old Head got literally like since China got hit first, that's where all the printing is, especially for like I did enamel pens. Yeah. All my stuff got messed up by the COVID fucked. I mean, everything's fucked up. But I was doing a Kickstarter in March of last year, right? That's the worst time in America.
Yeah.
And for me, so my printer is closed. Like they're not allowed to work, and the book's done. So my thing has always been from the beginning, from Ricky Thunder to Sex Castle to Kill Them All, is that it's done. Literally, once this ends, my printer's going to press go. And the time before you get it is the time it takes for them to print it, mail it to me, and mail it to you. And that's it, done. Because I love Kickstarter, but I don't want to wait a year to get anything. And I think people waited. My Kickstarter ended in November, and I think I had to wait for someone to color it, which sucked too. Family problems. They had a bunch of tragedies hit them at the end of that year, so that delayed it too. It was like, man, I think it was like 6 months later, and I'm updating. I'm like, I'm so sorry, guys. Like now, like this is what's happening. I hate it, but I love having that immediate turnaround because I don't. And I think Kickstarter hurt themselves. I'm tangenting so hard. Kickstarter hurt themselves early on because people started to do Kickstarters for ideas, and it's like I don't want to pay. I don't want to pay for you to do something. I want to buy something from you. And that's how I treat my Kickstarter backers. It's like, I don't want you to pay me to make something. I want you to buy the thing I made for you. And that means you get it right away, not a year from now, not 6 months, not a year and a half. That's crazy to me. I would never buy a book. If I pre-order something, it's like coming out next month, right? Like I need to know the thing exists. I don't want to just try to put money. And then I have to figure out, did the thing ever happen? Like, did I get the thing? Like, no, it's done. It's always done. And anyway, I love Kickstarter. That's the answer. Kickstarter is great. You get personal interactions. You get more stuff with your book. I wish there was a way to figure out how to do the international shipping. I think we talked about this. Like the international stuff is so expensive. It's more expensive.
Yeah, it's insane.
I wish there was some. I mean, I'm sure there is, but I bet it's like BackerKit or one of those things I don't want to use because they take a percentage, and I just don't want to give anyone a percentage of my money.
Yeah, that's fair.
So yeah, I love Kickstarter, man. I'm gonna do it again, just because. I can, and I like it. I think people are more willing to take a black and white book, and I don't color very well, in my opinion. It's not great.
Okay.
So it's like I think Kickstarter is also friendlier to the idea, like Karate Prom. That's Karate Prom will probably get colored in the future, I suspect. But it's like if no one wants it, if no one's interested in buying that thing from me, it's like I'm gonna Kickstart it and I'll do it black and white. And all my other books are black and white, basically, besides Old Head. And I think people are more welcome to that idea on Kickstarter. Stuff like that. I love Kickstarter, man. Kickstarter is great.
Yeah, I agree.
And Kickstarter were making big money like they were when it first started. I wish. Now, mind you, there's a fair amount of stuff that there's a lot of, you have to dig your way through. Again, you need influencers, man. But you can sell, like, you see, like, this book looks dumb. There's also a big single issue thing that I don't get. Like, people like buy my 24-page book for $10.
Yeah, it's a strange presence on Kickstarter. I'd always want a trade or
it's always number one.
Yeah, there's never an issue to. I mean, okay, I say that I do have a friend who did a full.
If it's a 4-issue series, they're saying, "Will you pay $40 plus shipping for my 4?"
And I do have a friend who did a full 6-issue run through Kickstarter, and that confused me. But he did all 6 issues, and it was all good. So fair play, I guess.
I think that all, like, you have to. Yeah, you can do it, but man, $40 for 4 issues.
Yeah,
I don't think
it's steep.
One issue. Yeah, I'm thinking about doing like a 40 issue, like maybe 40 to 60 page thing, something short, quick that I can sort of turn around, like I did Karate Prom, because I really enjoyed the experience of Karate Prom, which was just going to be sort of a one hit thing for me that turned into a whole year worth of me doing Karate Kids and Love. But I'd kind of like to do something like that too. I'd like to do another, just like, I just want to do it and get done and put it out. But it's like, there's a thing of like, man, like for me, if I did a 40-page book, like $10 seems seven to 10. Like, what's fair? You know what I mean? It's like, these guys are doing It's crazy. I don't know. I'll have to figure it all out. And the fact that I haven't figured it out slows me down. But I really like Kickstarter, man. I like Kickstarter because I can just make things and get them out there.
That makes a lot of sense. I completely understand that. While we're on Karate Prom, briefly, I only actually read it today, and I can't lie, it's great. Romantic comedy with karate. I didn't know that's what I needed, but yeah, good job.
Yeah, I think Karate Prom might be the 3rd best thing I've done. I'm really pleased with it. You can still get it for free, pay what you want. My Gumroad, if you go to my Twitter, at the Kyle Starks, it's the pinned tweet. I'm trying to sell that book, but still giving it away for free.
Yeah.
Or pay what you want. Maybe you read it for free, and then you like that's worth $3, and then throw $3 my way, whatever. I love Karate Prom. You know, Karate Prom, for those who aren't familiar, which is probably everyone, is that, you know, we did Comic Book Day last year, which is May, which was a couple of months after March, and people were just not, it was bad news. The comic stores were closed.
Yeah.
Bad news. We were definitely not going to have a free Comic Book Day, and I thought something like 12 or 14 days before free Comic Book Day, I thought, you know what the people need is a free comic book. And in my head, I was like, I'm going to do like a 6-page nothing, like just a garbage free thing I'll give away. And I was like, I didn't want any pressure on myself, so I asked my Twitter people to suggest titles for the book I would give away for free Comic Book Day. And my peer, Chris Schweitzer, who did Mars Attacks, is my best friend. We're doing a book at Skybound right now. He suggested Karate Prom, and it was an overwhelming favorite. And I was like, I'll do that. So I did. I was like, I'm going to do like a 10 or 15 page book. I have 10 days. I ended up doing 32 pages. I was nonstop for 9 days. I was it was like I was doing Ricky Thunder or Sex Castle again. I just felt this is so, and I hadn't drawn a comic for, I actually just finished Old Head, but prior to Old Head, it'd probably been a year and a half since I'd drawn anything, because people just wanted me to write stuff. They didn't want me to draw stuff. So it was really refreshing for me to do this thing that doesn't matter. There's no expectations. There's no limits. It's going to be free. But at the same time, like, this thing, like, when I got asked to do Mars Attacks, they're like, do you want to do Mars Attacks? And I was like, not really. But I was like, let me think about it. And if I get a good idea, then I'll do it. Like, I don't love Mars Attacks. I like the Tim Burton movie, fine. I never read the cards. I got in the shower that night, and I was like, oh, you know what? This is how you would do that story. And so I texted Chris, and I was like, this Mars Attacks thing, like, if I did this is a good idea, right? I'm really excited about it, right? I'm like, this is a good idea. And Chris is like, yeah, tell him I'll draw it. And I'm like, no, that's not Anyway, he drew it, right? He was like, do karate, but it's the same thing as like Karate Prom. Like, what would that be? And I was in the shower, and I'm like, oh no, here's what it is. Again, it's what do I want? Like, what interests me, right?
Yeah.
And it's all little things. And so it ended up being 32 pages because even though, and I really did sort of a lot of editing on myself because there are things like my guys sometimes just like to talk and do bits. You know what I mean? Like sometimes they just like to do bits, and I like doing bits. They make me really happy. There's like the middle finger joke in Rock Candy Mountain. Like every time I see it, it makes me laugh. It's like I do this stuff. You do the stuff that makes you laugh. So I kind of really edited this book down a lot, and I was like, I'm only going to keep the bits that are like super important.
Yeah. Okay.
I love it. So 9 days, I did a whole book. I got done. I had a deadline, which is great. And it's like, man, I loved it. I just loved it. And I finished that, and I should have been doing other things. But what I did instead was I did Karate After Party. And then after Karate After Party, I did Karate Graduation. So I did another 80 pages of Karate High School Kid that I'm now trying to figure out what to do with. But that book too, man, people get that book. I'm still like, I know they just have a year-end list, but people are still getting Karate Prom. Like, I'm selling it I'm selling it. Someone's downloading it. Maybe I'm selling it every other day. And it's great because like I love that. Like, and also I could kind of do like teen rom-com violent action stories for a while. Like get at me, bookmark it. Yeah, Karate Prom was wild. It's like it made me feel like a young person again, and I did a bunch more of it that again I'm hoping to sell. If not, I'm going to Kickstart it because I love Kickstarter. Who gives a shit. I just want people to read it. Oh, and the end is like you just want people to read your stuff. Like I'd love to be rich, but more than that, I'd love people to have read all my stuff and to talk about it. So,
I look forward to the Karate Trilogy Kickstarter.
Karate Trilogy. You know, at the time, we were talking about maybe doing it as 3 oversized issues and then collecting it. And I really like that idea a lot because it's more money, but also because I think it's tough to go direct to trade in America if it's not book market, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so we'll see. So it could be done as either 3 single issues or a collection, and we'd call it like Karate High School or Karate Love or something goofy. But it's good. I feel like that's the thing. You know, my wife's always like, when are you going to do something that your kids could read? And I'm like, I guess when they're 18. I guess when they're old enough to read my stuff. But it's like the answer is Karate Prom, the karate books they could read. They don't care. They don't want to read it. But my niece read it. My 16-year-old niece read it, and she said she likes how the characters vibe.
That's cool. That's good.
I think that's good. She said Sam has cool hair. That's a victory, I think.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. So I think this more or less is. I think this might be nearly the end of the podcast, Kyle. But
it's sad.
But the big question, the question to wind us down is: so what have you been reading recently, and what would you recommend to the wide world?
I'm literally the worst at this. You know what I read? Here's what I always say. Kaiju Back's great. I always say Four Kids Walking Back. It's great because that's the things that. But you know what? I just read Something in the Woods is Killing the Children. I really enjoyed. Mm-hmm. I just read a bunch of stuff. I'm trying to think of what else I read, but it's right now. I'm reading. Someone criticized a certain portion of how I do work. My Chris Schweitzer did. My friend did, and so I'm actually right now. I'm rereading the first 2 volumes of Sex Criminals Saga and Scalped, all the S books.
Yeah, some good stuff.
I just read God Country again for the million. I should get my hoopla up real quick and be like, these are all the things I read because I read a bunch of pretty good things that escaped me. What else did I read that was really good? Kaiju Max is great. I can't say Kaiju Max. 4 Kids Walking Bank. You know what I really enjoyed? I really enjoyed the first volume of Outer Darkness, which is a backhanded compliment to the series because I wasn't crazy about volume 2, but volume 1 was unbelievable fun. Like that's the comic experience I want. Volume 1 of Outer Darkness is like exactly the comic experience I want. Man, I'm so mad because I definitely read. I'm just like I don't have any money. Like I'm a comic book writer. I've been going through Hoopla and I did through a lot of the year-end stuff, and I know there was something else. Dracula motherfuckers, unbelievable. Yeah, of course. It makes me so mad because I know I'm rereading Kane. Gosh darn it. What's the Jack Staff Madman? What is that creator's name? Do you know what I'm talking about? Hold on a second. Hold on.
All right.
Paul Grist.
Okay, yeah.
Everything Paul Grist does. His Kane is such a good looking book. Yeah. I'm reading Kane for the first time. Paul Grist is good. He draws the best underfoot in comics, in my opinion.
Okay.
I'm actually reading more. The thing that I'm off because I'm actually reading more comics because of Hoopla, which is Hoopla is like a library app, so you get access to free things, but you only get so many. You get 15 books a month. That's why I can't be like, here's what I read. Here's what I read last month, because it's been like I have to wait for the cycle to renew, because you read 15 books in like 3 days, and then you have to wait a month for the next 15. But I know I read Something in the Woods is Killing the Children, and I really enjoyed it. There's something else I read, and it makes me really upset. If I would have known this question was coming, I'd be more prepared. But that's all good ones. Four Kids Walking to a Bank is really good. That's from, I guess,
a really good book.
Kaiju Max is, I don't know why people don't talk about Kaiju Max all the time. Kaiju Max, which is an ongoing now, Kaiju Max and Six Gun. Six Gun is an unbelievable run. It's like 50 issues, I think. Yeah. And people should talk about Six Gun the same way they talk about Y the Last Man and they talk about Preacher, as just a really tight, great maxi series that lands. Kaiju Max is really good. Four Kids Walking to the Bank is really good. That first volume of Outer Darkness is just so good. Yeah. Anything that I've done, period, is great. I highly recommend that. You can get them from my store, kyleStarks.com/merch. Boy, Headlopper is always good. Yeah. Now I'm just thinking of my friends and who I can promote. But Headlopper, I love Andrew McLean's such a talented creator, and I think the third arc just came out, or the fourth arc, whatever they're on now. Comics, man, comics are great. I'm really trying to read more comics, and I haven't in years. I read Daniel Warren Johnson's Wonder Woman. I thought it was okay. Yeah. Daniel Warren Johnson is so good. I recommend just looking at his stuff. Just look at it. It's good to just look at.
He's, I think, Extremity and the Ghost Fleet. I think Ghost Fleet might be my favorite.
Think about if Donny Cates and Daniel Warren Johnson were doing a book in 2021. How huge that would be.
Yeah, I'd be into that. I think that's what I need.
The book of the year. It would be the book of the year. Murder Falcon, I thought was surely a bad idea. I just got my low battery warning. Was surely a bad idea. Great. Extremity. I was like, this guy, I knew Daniel before he had a book, and I was like, for sure. I mean, I knew of his work before, and I'm like, this is going to be not very well written. It's too well written. It's not fair how good Extremity is. Extremity is unbelievable.
Yes, so good.
Those are my recommendations. A lot of recommendations.
They're good recommendations, if you ask me. So, Kyle, thank you very much for joining me. This has been a fun episode, and thank you to whoever's listening for joining us. This has been Bigger Than Capes. I've been Zach. I suppose I'll carry on being Zach as well. And you can find Kyle's works on Twitter at the Kyle Starks and at kylestarks.com, if I'm correct.
I'm at the Kyle Starks on all social media. Or you go to kylestarks.com and buy my stuff.